established. With that, I'd like to call this meeting to order at 4 o'clock. Council, any additions or deletions to today's agenda? Councillor Taylor.
Yeah, I'd like 7-3. The copy I got that I read seemed to be incomplete. I couldn't identify where that component of the document was with the track changes. And I only just received the track changes right now, so I haven't had a chance to do it. So if it's absolutely urgent and we want to do it right now, I guess, then let's go through each track change painfully by painfully, or we could wait to do it when we have a chance to review it.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Administration, any comments on the urgency factor for 7.3?
Sir, administration does not feel that it's urgent. This is a matter that we've been working on for some time. We feel that it's mostly administrative in nature, but do apologize that the wrong item was circulated last week.
Thank you for that, ICO Hanlon. Council, any other proposed changes or deletions to the agenda? Administration.
Sir, nothing to add, nothing to delete.
Thank you, ICO Hanlon. Council, with that, I'll entertain a motion. Councillor Taylor.
I move we adopt the agenda as the requested change.
Thank you for that, Councillor Taylor. Council, we have a motion on the floor to adopt it as amended. Councillor Stashik.
Thank you, Mayor Michaels. So procedurally, then what would happen to item 7.3 if it's struck from today's agenda?
Thank you, Councillor Stashik. ICO Hanlon.
Sir, it would be administration's intention then to return this to the next council meeting on August 16th.
Thank you for that, Councillor Stashik.
That's fine. That doesn't need a direction from council then, I'm assuming.
ICO Hanlon.
Sir, no, we would bring that back at the next council meeting.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Stashik and ICO Hanlon. Council, we have a motion on the floor to adopt as amended. Any debate? Seeing none, I'll call to question. All those in favor? That's passed unanimously. That'll bring us to our council minutes for adoption. Council, any questions? If not, I'll entertain a motion. Councillor LaBerge.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to move that we adopt the minutes for the regular council meeting of July 19th, 2022.
Thank you, Councillor LaBerge. Council, we have a motion on the floor. Any debate or questions? Seeing none, I'll call to question. All those in favor? That's also passed unanimously. That'll bring us to our citizens minute with council. If you're in the crowd, if you would like to come forward, just please state your name. Seeing no one, just to confirm, Ms. Davy Campbell, any inquiries from online?
No, there are none.
Thank you. That'll bring us to our public hearing for this evening, item 6.1. Apologies. The following public hearing is held pursuant to section 692 of the Municipal Government Act, being chartered M26 RSA 2000 and amendments thereto. The following rules of conduct will be followed during the public hearing. The presentation should be brief and to the point. The order of presentation shall be entry of written submissions, those supporting the bylaw, those opposing the bylaw, and any other persons deemed to be affected by the bylaw. Council may ask questions of the speakers after each presentation for clarification purposes. There will be no debate in the bylaw. However, questions to the councillors or other parties will be accepted through the chair. With that, I hereby declare the public hearing relating to the bylaw open. Administration.
Mr. Mayor, I will at this time turn this over to Ms. Walker. Oh, sorry.
The purpose of the proposed bylaw number 1088-17 is to insert terminology for short-term rentals bylaw number 1162 and other edits, including updates to legislation, omissions, language updates, and definitions as shown in attachment 1. First reading was given to bylaw number 1088-17 on June 21st, 2022. Notice of this public hearing was advertised consecutively in the Hinton Voice newspaper on July 7th and 14th, 2022, as well as advertised on the Town of Hinton website, Civic Send, and Facebook.
Thank you, Ms. Davy Campbell. Are there any late submissions relating to bylaw 1088-17?
No, there's not.
Is there anyone present who would like to speak in favor of the bylaw 1088-17? Seeing no one, is there anyone present who wishes to speak in opposition to bylaw 1088-17? Seeing none, is there anyone present who is deemed to be affected by bylaw 1088-17 and wishes to speak? Do the councillors have any further questions? Do the councillors require further information? Seeing none, I hereby declare the public hearing to bylaw 1088-17 is closed and will accept a motion to adjourn. Councillor Taylor. Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Council, we have a motion on the floor. Seeing no one, I'll call to question. All those in favor? That's passed unanimously. Thank you very much. That'll bring us to our action items for this evening. 7.1, Land Use Bylaw Amendment 1088-17, second and third reading, Business License Bylaw Amendment to 1126-2, third reading. With that, ICO Hanlon.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We are on page 11 of your agenda package. And with this now, I will turn this over to Municipal Planner, Ms. Walker.
Thank you, ICO Hanlon, through to council. Following the public hearing that we just previously held, administration is seeking second and third reading of Land Use Bylaw Amendment 1088-17. Add provisions to reflect short-term rentals, as well as additional edits, including update to legislation, omissions, language updates, and definitions. Additionally, administration is seeking third reading on Business License Bylaw 1126-2. Council had made a motion to apply a business license fee of $1,500 for non-principal resident short-term rentals at the February 15th Committee of the Whole meeting. After further discussion at the regular meeting of council on June 22nd, council did not pass the fee and asked administration to bring back a report to the August 2nd regular meeting, which is where we're at this evening. Administration had recommended a fee of $500 for non-principal resident short-term rentals based on research of other municipalities with similar fee schedules. These documents must be amended to reflect the short-term rentals bylaw 1162 to set in place regulations and a fee structure to cover administrative functions and management related to short-term rentals within our community. The purpose of this report is twofold tonight, and we are seeking direction from town council on the passing of the land use bylaw 1088-17 and the business license bylaw 1126-2. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Walker. Council. Any debate, questions? What would we like to do with this? Councillor LaBerge.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move the council. Oh. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move the council give land use bylaw number 1088-17 second reading.
Thank you, Councillor LaBerge. Council, we have a direction on the floor. Any debate, questions? Councillor Taylor.
Didn't the admin person that was reading what they just read said this was for the third reading?
Administration.
That's what they said.
That's for business license bylaw 1126-2.
Oh, I see.
We're just dealing with the land use bylaw.
Okay,
first.
sorry.
It's
Thanks.
the report has twofold in it. Yes.
Thanks. That's fine.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Council, any further debate or questions? Seeing none, I'll call to question that council give land use bylaw 1088-17 second reading. All those in favor? That's passed unanimously. Councillor McGoon.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move the council give land use bylaw 1088-17 second reading.
Council.
Second. 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 Second
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to move the council give land use bylaw number 1088-17 third reading.
Thank you, Councillor Magoon. Council, again, we have a reading on the floor. Any debate, questions? Seeing none, I'll call to question. The council give land use bylaw 1088-17 a third reading. Council, all those in favor? That's also passed unanimously. And with that, I'll hand it back to ICO Hanlon for the second component.
Thank you, sir. And thank you for council's cooperation on the amendments to the land use bylaw. The second portion of this item is the business license bylaw amendment 1126-2. And with that, again, I will pass that over to Ms. Walker and she will take us through that. And again, we'll be looking for some direction on a number from council for this matter.
Thank you, ICO Hanlon through to council. Yes, as mentioned in my preview here, administration previously has recommended $500 for the non-principal residents based on research. And there isn't a lot out there to compare with, but what I have been able to compare with, that's around the price range between $500 to $700 for a non-principal. However, with regards to the June 21st council meeting, there was an option for council to set a fee of $750, which was not supported by all of council. So what administration is recommending that perhaps at the will of council, they look at perhaps settling somewhere in between the original $1,500 that was set at the committee of council and the $750 that was a motion made by Councillor Race at the last June 21st meeting, and perhaps somewhere in between, and administration suggested $900. Again, it's ultimately council's will to set a fee for non-principal residents, and then you may provide third reading as amended this evening.
Thank you, Ms. Walker. Councillor Taylor.
Yeah, I'd like to put a motion that we revise bylaw 11262 to include a fee of $505 for the non-principal resident short-term rentals. That's based on the previous administration recommendations. Yeah, and I'm not going to read my comments from before because you've all heard my comments. But the only thing I'd like to say in addition on this is not a principal reason for going with this amount, but it's something to further consider regarding the $1,500 amount. I think one thing that'll happen with the $1,500 amount is it'll drive people underground and they'll be inclined, because the fee's so large, to not get a business license. And then the onus will be on us to prove that they were conducting a business. It's going to cause us more trouble than it's worth, because I think that's one thing that's going to happen. That means that we're going to have to catch them. We're going to have to prove that they're non-compliant. It's just a lot of work, particularly for something where we've already got the mitigation measure all figured out. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Council, we have a motion on the floor. Any debate, questions, comments? Councillor Magoon.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just in short, I think Councillor Taylor brings up a number of good points, and I look forward to supporting the motion on the floor.
Thank you, Councillor Magoon. Council, we have a motion on the floor. Any further debate? Councillor Stashik.
Thank you, Mayor Michaels. I won't support the motion as presented. I've stated before that part of the reasoning for my supporting a short-term rental bylaw is to help make sure that our regular rental market is not significantly impacted by short-term rental providers. And I don't believe that that a $500 per year fee to have a non-residential short-term rental is enough of a disincentive to maybe consider supplying these units on the conventional rental market rather than short-term. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stashik. Councillor Taylor.
Correction, I did say 505.
Thank you for that clarification.
Pleasure.
Council. I won't be in favor of this. Councillor Stashik shared many of the same points. I was more open for non-principal, or when it's your principal residence, I can see the argument of trying to, make extra money to pay for your mortgage, et cetera, et cetera. But if you have the ability to buy a second dwelling, take away from these long-term rentals, which is again a problem not common only to Hinton, but this is throughout our country, that this is a challenging aspect. And we have many workers in our community who make $15 an hour, $17 an hour, and rentals are simply affected by this, and I believe will be affected more. So to me, 505 is still way too low. So I'll be speaking against this. Thank you. Council, any further debate, questions before I call this to question? Seeing none, call to question that council approve the annual fee of $505 for short-term rental non-principal residents. Council, all those in favor? Opposed? That is defeated. Council, what would we like to do with this? Any further debate? Councillor LaBerge.
I'd like to put a motion forward to adjust the fee schedule on bylaw 11, the bylaw we're working on. For a non-principal resident to pay $900 per calendar year. And if I could just speak to that, I guess I agree with a lot of the things that Councillor Ostashik had indicated earlier. It's why I pushed back against this as hard as I have since the beginning. But I do think that it's time to sort of put this thing to bed, and maybe some sort of an adjustment here would help to do that. So.
Thank you, Councillor LaBerge. Council, we have a motion on the floor. Any debate, questions? Councillor Taylor.
Yeah, I'm not going to support that. It's still too high. I don't think.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Council, any further debate, questions to the motion on the floor? I won't be supporting this. It's more palatable. My threshold, and I know it becomes challenging when we start finding the perfect number, but to me, after talking to people who rent, I think it has to hold a bit more weight. Asking $100 a month to me is extremely fair. If it's a second home that you're using commercial, they pay non-residential, or they pay residential tax. The private sector pays 72% more, and you're able to use, and I stand by it, you're using your dwelling as the actual service, as the actual entity to make money. And to me, that when it's your an entire second home, that to me is a commercial business. It has some connection to it, and 900 is 70 dollars a month, and to me it's just not enough for what I believe has an impact to the community, and a service level that'll impact also. So for that 900, it's much better, but I won't be in support of this. Thank you. Council, any further debate, questions, comments? Seeing none, I'll call to question to adjust the fee schedule on bylaw 1126-2 for non-principal residents to pay $900 per calendar year. Council, all those in favor? Opposed? That is defeated. Council, any further direction, comments, questions? What would we like to do with this item? I'll accept a motion for information to move it. Councillor Ostashik.
Like to move that council give business license bylaw number 1126-2 third reading as amended.
And thank you, Councillor Ostashik. Council, we have a motion on the floor. Any debate, questions, comments? Councillor Taylor.
Support this bylaw at that fee structure. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Council, Any further debate? Counselor Magoon,
Just point of clarification, I think more so for anybody else who's watching, that would be our $1,500 indication that currently sits on the agenda.
administration, just for confirmation.
Yes, that is correct.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor Magoon. Thank you, administration. Council, any further debate, questions? Seeing none, I'll call to question that council give business license bylaw 1126-2 third reading as amended. Council, all those in favor? Opposed? And that is carried. Council, Counselor Taylor,
You mean as amended? There was no amendment,
administration,
or did I miss something?
The business license bylaw would be amended to add that fee into it, into the fee schedule. Because it wasn't there before, so.
Oh, I
adding
see,
it
the
into-
1,500.
And it might be a good idea to have this right in your motion, the $1,500. If you guys want to, it'd be wise to.
well,
in there.
administration, we just passed the motion, so I would lean on administration too.
Sir, I would suggest that we have to let the motion stand, and it is understood it was $1,500.
Perfect. Thank you for that. Council, anything further for this item this evening? Seeing none, thank you, administration and council. That'll bring us to 7.2 for this evening. Bylaw number 1169, Youth Advisory Council, ICO Hanlon.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to all of council. I'm on page 32 of this afternoon's agenda package. Very excited to bring draft bylaw 1169 forward for the consideration of council. This is the Hinton Youth Advisory Council bylaw. And at this time, I'll ask Heather Mark to take us through this item.
Good afternoon, Council. Thank you for the opportunity. So we're presenting this bylaw following the July 12th Committee of the Whole meeting. Track changes have since been removed from the attachment for legibility and accessibility, and we have Ms. Bouchard, the FCSS manager, available over Zoom for any particular questions to that service branch. I myself, as the administrative contact, am available for questions. Tonight, administration is seeking all 3 readings of the draft bylaw as presented. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Mark. Council, any debate, questions? Counselor Taylor.
Just an idea that I'd like to discuss with council. When I look at the purpose, why this was formed, one thing that's glaringly missing to me is that maybe it's already in there vaguely, but would it be worthwhile having a 239? And that would be to give student councils a formal vehicle to bring issues forward to council. So some of our schools have formal student councils. And this, they could come up with ideas, they could give it to the youth council, they could discuss it, this could be brought forward to us. It's just, I mean, they could do it other ways, but this is one way and gives the youth council an extra oomph for purpose. So just if you discuss it, and I could make a motion if there's a remote agreement.
Thank you, Counselor Taylor. Council, any debate, questions, motions? Counselor Taylor.
We amend bylaw 1169 to add a 2.39. And the wording would be give local student councils a formal vehicle to bring issues forward to town council.
Thank you, Counselor Taylor. Council, we have a motion on the floor. Counselor Ostashik.
Thank you, Mayor Michaels. Question to administration. What's the mechanism in place currently for the Hinton Youth Advisory Council to bring forward questions or concerns that they would like formally addressed?
Thank you through the chair to Councillor Ostashik and the rest of the councillors. As a committee, despite the title being Youth Council, we do have the 2 annual presentations that are required of this group. Otherwise, as a delegation, the Hinton Youth Advisory Council could engage at any moment with council by going through the executive assistant. I believe that answers the question. Let me know if there's a follow-up.
Counselor Ostashik.
Good. Thank you.
Thank you. Council, any further debate, questions? Seeing none.
Counselor Taylor, can you please have a look at your motion? I didn't understand. You're asking to amend bylaw 1169 to add section 2.39.
To give local student councils a formal vehicle to bring issues forward to town council.
A formal vehicle?
Yes.
Yeah, that's the way I worded it. A formal method. Vehicle. Formal way,
What's your preference?
a formal vehicle.
Bring to council?
To bring issues forward to Hinton Town Council.
Is that good, Counselor Taylor?
Perfect, thank you.
I have, oh yeah, I'll go to Counselor McGowan.
So just point of clarification. What I heard was a little bit different, and I just need Councillor Taylor to clarify. Was it section 2.39 to give local student councils a formal vehicle?
Yes, that was it.
Thank you.
If I may, council, I will remind that 231 is that HYAC will ensure the voice of youth is heard by decision makers in Hinton and elsewhere. And that otherwise the purpose of committees of council is generally to receive direction from council. Thank you.
So that was my question. I like this in principle. I don't know what that vehicle would look like, but are we talking about the youth council bringing requests for proposals or requests for decisions? My apologies. And is that legally binding? Council usually gives direction, or administration through a strategic plan will bring something, right? Or they'll bring a request for decision. As long as its administration doesn't have any comments that are weary, I support this in principle. But any comments on what are we looking at that administration could be bringing back, or this youth council, the way it reads, what does administration sort of foresee that being?
Sir, perhaps if I could, through you to council, I'd maybe want to just confirm what the intent of Councillor Taylor is on this and what he envisioned this committee possibly returning to council with.
Thank you for that, ICO Hanlon. Councillor Taylor, any comments on?
Sure. The issue that comes to mind would be, say, the playing field at the high school. High school students might have say, we need this fixed and we'd like to go to town council. We'd like to bring this to town council and have the upkeep on a field or the upkeep on a facility that they use that's a town facility, something to that nature. Could be all sorts of things.
Okay, so if I may, if there's an issue like that, they would just come as a delegation and come and present, is the idea?
They could do it. They could do it that way, but this way, if they could just come here and present as the Harry Collins Town Council, or they could present to the youth council, and the youth council could come and present to us, and maybe it's a broader issue than one school. It's an issue that affects a bunch of schools, so they bring it to the youth council. It's just a way to engage youths in this community in a more formal way that ties the student councils with the town council. I think there's nothing but good that could come from hearing what these people have to say.
Okay, thank you for that, Councillor Taylor. Councillor Stashik.
I guess I would have some questions about how the student councils from the schools would engage with the youth advisory council. Is there currently any formal interaction between the youth advisory council and the formal student councils from each school?
Administration?
Thank you. Through the chair to Councillor Stashik. There is an administrative connection that serves on the youth council who is employed by one of the schools. The students themselves attend the schools, of course. I cannot speak to the state of the student councils at the different high schools. HYAC has not received any formal request by any of these student councils to create a delegation to present before council on issues that affect youth in the community. It is understood by the students that serve on HYAC as their appointment term requires, they must be cognizant of the issues within their community and engaged by volunteering and engaging with their school boards otherwise.
Can I follow up then?
Mhm.
Yeah, so hearing that, because of the wording of the motion referring specifically to student councils, I'd be a little bit concerned, I guess, about what the process would be for those student councils to be able to bring things forward. Also, I'm as Ms. Mark, I'm not sure that all the schools that are represented on the youth advisory committee have student councils. So I'm not sure they'd be able to participate. I think I too understand the principle and support the principle of it. I'm just not sure that we're achieving anything that isn't already captured in the bylaw the way that it's written. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stashik. I just want to confirm, did Ms. Bouchard, did you have your hand up there? Okay. The floor is yours.
Thanks. Yeah, I just wanted to speak to, so the role of the Hinton Youth Center coordinator, currently right now, James Everett, he has that connection with the schools. So it's the family liaisons as well as we go into the high schools too. So that's where we have that connection with the youth as well. And that's just part of what we do through FCSS is keep our pulse on the youth and the gaps and kind of hearing what our youth are struggling with and want in the community. So that's kind of where it fits as well.
Thank you, Ms. Bouchard. Councillor Taylor.
I think that's a good point about regarding this motion, and that's that it formally ties it so that the youth council will see, hey, this is a role. Maybe we should go canvass these people. You know, let's get bogged down on what the process is. There could be 10,000 processes that we follow, but they could contact the student councils maybe twice a year. So you have any issues that you'd like us to talk about, and that helps strengthen the youth council. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Council, any further debate, questions? Councillor LaBerge.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I'll make the same comment, I guess, and this is why policy always gets so bloated, but I think clause 2.31, thanks, Ms. Marks, for your comments there, covers it. And I think keep it simple is the best way. I think the opportunity is given, and really what we're talking here is operational stuff.
Thank you, Councillor LaBerge. Council, any further debate, questions, comments? Seeing none. Call to question to amend bylaw 1169 to add section 2.39 to give local student council to bring a formal vehicle to bring issues forward to town council. Council, all those in favor? Opposed? That is defeated. Council, what would we like to do with this item today? Councillor Taylor.
Yeah, I had another question. I'm just interested in your feedback, if you have any, regarding the nomination process. Some details on nomination process, but there's nothing on what happens if we have more candidates than we have nominees.
Administration, if that were to be the case, what is the process for that?
So youth counselors, and thank you for the question, are appointed for their one-year term during the organizational meeting of council. Counselors are familiar with the process of reviewing the applicants once they go to FCSS or legislative services. It is in closed session at the discretion of council based off of the nomination forms, which youth are appointed.
Counselor Taylor, any?
Well, is that the way we want it? Or would there be a broader election process to be more representative of the youth in this community? Just a question for you.
Thank you, Counselor Taylor. Council,
If he says anything, I won't put a motion forward.
any debate, any questions? Counselor Stashik.
Well, as a committee of council, I believe there's council's committee or council committees bylaw, which governs how members of council committees are nominated and how they are named by council. I wouldn't really want to get too far into the weeds in exploring different options for how individuals are named to this committee in particular. I think the process we have now works relatively well, and yeah, I'm not sure the benefits of coming up with something that goes against the committee's bylaw and the process that's already in place for naming members to the committees. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor Stashik. Council, is there appetite to give first reading? Oh, Counselor Taylor.
Yeah, I'm just curious, section 8.3. Why is 5,000 funds set aside towards a bursary fund when there's 8 students and each student gets $500 each?
Administration?
Thank you for the question. So it's $8,000 annually. And then 8.35,000 designated towards the bursary fund for the maximum of 8 students. This year, there's only 6 students. So not the entirety of funds are used, but putting that money aside.
My question, may I follow up, please?
Mhm.
My question was, why are we offering $5,000 a year for funds when the maximum that we can give out in a given year is $4,000? That's what it seems. 8 students times $500 each is 4,000. So why would we have 5,000 in here?
Administration?
Thank you for bringing that to the attention of administration. My recommendation is that we propose a motion amending that to $4,000 to reflect the maximum that would be given out for 8 students. In the history of the 3 years of this committee, there's never been an instance where a youth has received more than $500 for a given appointment term. And because not every youth is graduating or claiming entire bursary amounts of more than the $500 for the year, that would suffice.
Counselor Taylor? Okay, you're good. Counselor LeBerge.
I was going to move. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was going to move that council give Hinton Youth Advisory Council bylaw 1169 first reading as presented.
Thank you, Counselor LeBerge. Counselor Stashik.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to request to table that motion until we have an opportunity to discuss the budget amount that Counselor Taylor just brought up.
Oh, that's a good point.
Counselor LeBerge, would you?
Of course.
Administratively, how can we table this?
So I think you can now have that discussion.
Okay. Okay, so there's no motion on the floor. Counselor Magoon or Counselor
It's
Stashik?
motion to table.
Okay. Council, we have a motion to table the first reading. Any debate, questions? Seeing none, I'll call to question. All those in favor? That motion is tabled. Counselor Magoon.
Just as a follow-up question on Councillor Taylor's question on 8.3, it does say that council will allocate $8,000 annually. So if there's currently money in that account because the bursaries, for example, haven't been fully used over the year, are we continually just adding to that pot? Does it grow, or are we topping up to 8,000 each year?
Administration?
Thank you for the question, Council. Unfortunately, I cannot speak to the code in which this account, the money is allocated to.
ICO Hanlon?
Thank you, sir. Through you to Councillor Magoon, to all of council. Any monies not expended would simply be returned back to general revenues at the end of the year and then the following year. So this is not an accruing account. So we would budget for the following year based on the amounts required. That is section 8 or the budget item of the proposed bylaw. Now, just again, there's some proposed amendments to consider here, and that's going to affect the numbers. But the numbers do not carry forward unless a formal motion is made by council to do so each year.
Councillor McGinn,
Great, thank you.
council, any direction? Councillor Taylor.
Well, it's kind of a principle. If it's precise budgeting and then you know what you're going to spend and you have more money to spend on something else, we should be following that principle with everything that we do. Therefore, I'd like to make a motion to amend section 8 of the budget clause in bylaw 1169 to allocate a maximum of $7,000, of which $4,000 of the funds will be designated towards the bursary fund. And this just goes to our most important job that we have to do as a council, which is precise budgeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Council, we have a motion on the floor that would amend 8.1 and 8.3 to show 7,000 and 5,000 respective, 7,000 and 4,000. Council, any debate, questions?
If I may, council, as I project feasibilities for this bylaw and its interpretation moving forward. Because we understand that any money that is not used by HYAC in a given year goes back into accrual revenue, I would hesitate to reduce the amount available should there be an instance because anyone appointed to HYAC following graduation from high school has up to 2 years to enter post-secondary at an accredited institution and to request on behalf of the town the money from the bursary fund. They're eligible for $500 annually for any appointment term. These students could potentially serve from grade 8 to grade 12. There could be a year where we have a student who'd be eligible for $2,000, $2,500 on behalf of the town. And then other students that could be graduating as well. So precise budgeting, absolutely important for administration. Having a student potentially come forward and our bylaw saying that no, we actually cannot, based off of $4,000, provide you with the entirety of the funds that you otherwise would have been entitled to, based on other students that might be graduating, that would be my hesitation. And of course, that is for a deliberation by council. Thank you.
Thank you, administration, for that. Councillor Taylor.
That's good reason. I withdraw the motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Thank you, administration, for that. Council, any opposition to withdraw the motion? Seeing none, motion withdrawn. If there's nothing further, I could accept the motion to take first reading off the table and bring it back up, or are there other questions? Councillor Taylor.
Move that we go to first reading on this bylaw.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. We have a motion on the floor to untable the first reading. Any debate? Seeing none, all those in favor? That's passed. First reading is now on the floor. Council, any questions, debate? Seeing none. I will call to question. That council give the Hinton Youth Advisory Council bylaw 1169 first reading as presented. Council, all those in favor? That's passed unanimously. Council, any appetite for further readings? Councillor Magoon.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to move the council give Hinton Youth Advisory Council bylaw number 1169 second reading as presented.
Thank you, Councillor Magoon. Council, we have a motion on the floor. Any debate, questions? Seeing none, I'll call to question that council give Hinton Youth Advisory Council bylaw 1169 second reading as presented. Council, all those in favor? That's passed unanimously. Council, appetite to give unanimous consent this evening? Counselor LaBerge.
I move the council vote to give unanimous consent to the Hinton Youth Advisory Council bylaw 1169.
Thank you, Counselor LaBerge. Council, we have a motion for unanimous consent. Counselor Taylor.
Just a process question. Don't we normally have like a third reading?
So if I may. So you cannot pass 3 bylaws in the same day unless there's
Oh,
unanimous.
I'm sorry,
consent.
I misread a line. Sorry, thank you.
Thank you, Counselor Taylor. Thank you, Counselor LaBerge. Council, we have a motion on the floor to give unanimous consent. Any debate, questions? Seeing none, I'll call to question. Council vote to give unanimous consent to the Hinton Youth Advisory Council bylaw 1169. Council, all those in favor? That is passed unanimously. And Counselor Magoon.
Actually, I have a point of clarification on the agenda. The 4th line says that the recommended action is that council unanimously give 3rd and final reading is presented. My understanding is that 3rd reading does not need to be unanimous because we've already sought out unanimous consent. Isn't that correct?
Administration.
Sir, through you to Counselor Magoon and all of council, that is correct. You need not be unanimous on the 3rd reading.
Okay. Thank you, Counselor Magoon.
Then I'd like to move that council give Hinton Youth Advisory Council bylaw number 1169 3rd and final reading as presented.
Thank you, Counselor Magoon. Counselor Taylor.
Yeah, my apologies for my questions related to this bylaw, but I think it's incumbent on all of us to try to continuously work on ways to get the youth in this community engaged in the issues of the town. And that's what my attempts were trying to do unsuccessfully here, but thank you very much.
Thank you, Counselor Taylor. Council, any further debate questions? We have a motion for 3rd and final reading. Seeing none, I'll move that council give Hinton Youth Advisory Council bylaw 1169 3rd and final reading as presented. Council, all those in favor? That is passed unanimously. Council, anything further for this item this evening? Seeing none, thank you, administration. And that will bring us to our new 7.3, which will be replacement of town-owned sweeper. ICO Hanlon.
Thank you, Mayor Michaels, and through you to all of council. Very pleased to bring this item on, starting on page 56 of your agenda package. Proposed replacement of town-owned sweeper. This is a replacement of our 1997 Elgin Eagle, and I will ask Mr. Rousseau, who's Public Works Supervisor, prepared this report to take us through, and administration is available to answer any questions. Thank you.
Mr. Russo.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. Good evening. You have before you the report for your consideration and potential motion as per our recommendation as administration. But just to give a little bit of background, May the 10th, we brought an initial report to Council regarding the 1997 Elgin sweeper that had continues to have mechanical challenges based on age, time, and use, but more so also the safety of the machine has been implicated because of a silicate concern that gets into the cabin. That being said, because of the age of the machine, Council has tasked us after the May the 10th to have a look at options that could have a broader sort of aspect of inclusion, meaning one, what is the emerging trends out there? Do we see hybrids? What is the best, green options available? Realizing that grants are emerging as well for this type of thing in terms of equipment. And so we brought it back on the 26th of July for Council's consideration and discussion, which we had a good conversation, the 26th Committee of the Whole. And Council has directed us to bring back this report to consider purchasing a used machine that has about 500 to 1,000 hours on it. And these machines normally come to the market because they're brand new, used by like larger cities, City of Calgary, Edmonton. And then they come to the market with 500 plus hours on it, between 500 and 1,000. And they come with a price tag of at least $60,000 less than if you had to purchase them new. With that, Council has also asked us to run a parallel process. If this motion does carry as per recommendation, that we look at granting opportunities in preparation for when we should be changing out our next machine, not just for street sweepers, but all of our fleet, what options are available. So with that, Council, we are open for any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Russo. Councilor Taylor.
I'd like to go move the recommended action. The council approve the purchase of the rental return as worded here, please.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Would you like to speak to that? Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Council, we have a motion on the floor. Councillor Stashik.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just before it gets called to question, I had a question regarding something that Mr. Rousseau said about exploring grants for potential future purchases. I thought I heard, sorry, I apologize. I probably heard wrong. I thought I heard you say that there was a wish that formed part of the motion.
Mr. Russo?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Mr. Mayor. I did not expressly say that it's a wish, Councillor Stashik, to be part of the motion, but council does have the ability to include that in our motion if that's the parallel process, John. We had the conversation, but it wasn't directed accordingly.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Stashik. Administration. Council. We have a motion on the floor, which is the recommended action. Any further debate, questions? Seeing none. Call to question that council approved the purchase of a rental return Elgin Eagle Street sweeper for a price not to exceed $350,000 as discussed at the July 26, 2022 Committee of the Whole meeting. Council, all those in favor? That is passed unanimously. Council, anything further for 7.3? Seeing none. Thank you, administration. That'll bring us to our last action item, which is 7.4, the Economic Development Proposal Community Futures, page 62, ICO Hanlon.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to all of council. This is an opportunity for some additional funding out of the remaining 2022 economic development budget. This is a proposal that I've been working with Community Futures West Yellowhead on to bring to council here this evening. A bit of background, the May 3rd, 2022 council meeting, administration confirmed at that time a remaining economic development operating budget of just over $105,000. Administration for just the 2022 operating year committed to expend these budgeted funds in support of appropriate economic development activities. Through May and June, the CAO, that is the interim CAO, provided support in the amount of approximately $16,000 to 5 local economic development opportunities, which reduced the remaining funds to just over $89,000. During the June 7th meeting, council accepted an information report regarding the award of an additional $18,505 of the 2022 economic development supports to 3 projects. After these awards, there remained available just over $70,000 in funds. Most recently, at the June 21st meeting, council approved funding of $40,000 from this budget in support of the development of a destination management administrator, a DMO, for Hinton through the Hinton Chamber of Commerce. This reduced the remaining 2022 economic development budget to an estimated amount of $30,495. As I mentioned at the beginning of my report, administration has been continuing to develop a proposal with Community Futures West Yellowhead to proceed with another local economic recovery grant program. This proposal has now been finalized and it's been reviewed by administrations, brought before council for funding consideration in this year. The town and CFWI proposed and attempted a similar COVID-19 recovery program in the past. It's believed that the possible issues that limited interest and possible uptake by local businesses have now been addressed, and that both interest and need for this type of grant program exists within local businesses. Hence, the proposal is a request of funding of up to $25,000. This program would be administered by CFWY on behalf of the town of Hinton. Proposes business support grants between $1,000 and $5,000. Marketing of the program would be supported through the town of Hinton communications teams with the support of CFWY social media channels. Attachment 1 provides a proposed economic recovery grant program or an applicant's guide for the proposed plan. The proposed grant Format would be very similar to the town's community grants with the following exceptions. Number one, ad hoc business organizations not included in any other eligible category are added. This is to include groups such as the Green Square Business Group, Valley Business Group, ENER, and the HREDC as examples. CFWY would project manage the grant on behalf of these organizations and oversee the expenditures and the reporting. The proposal would need to fall under one of the following categories is proposed: development of knowledge and or tools to diversify the local economy, labor market skills development, capacity building of community organizations, enhanced services and infrastructure, promotion of entrepreneurship and business development, including development of business skills. And two, an additional assessment question is added where the project must show a relation to COVID-19 economic recovery within Hinton. The CFWY will have a grant review committee similar to the Town of Hinton Community Grant Program, consisting of 2 directors from the BOD, preferably that would be Hinton representatives, 2 CFWY staff, and 1 business representative not applying for the program to review submitted applications. A fairly ambitious schedule is proposed and is included on page 63. Possibly as soon as August 15th, applications open for submission. September 15th, applications closed. September 16th, review committee review applications. September 20th, successful applicants would be notified. September 27th, CFWY will provide an update to council on the successful projects. December 31st, deadline for expenses for projects to be completed. That is within the 2022 budget year. January 15th, final reports due on projects and success reporting. January 31st, CFWY will provide an update to council on grant program success. As was previously discussed with council regarding this type of project and CFWY's involvement, CFWY confirms they would typically charge a 5% per grant issued to the successful applicant. So for instance, a $5,000 grant, that would be an administrative fee of $250 that would, so of the $5,000, $250 would go to CFWY for their oversight and their management of that. This administrative fee would not come from the grant amounted to the successful organization, but instead from the overall funds allocated by council for this project. The exception would be successful applications from ad hoc business organizations, which were addressed earlier, where that fee would be increased to 7%. So a 5,000 grant, there'd be a administrative fee of $350. In discussions with CFWY, that is, their feeling is that the ad hoc groups require a bit more management and oversight to satisfy the requirements of the program, and so a little bit more staff time on their end. It is anticipated the benefit to the town of Hinton in support of this investment would include an alignment with the town of Hinton economic development, strategic propriety through the implementation of the town's economic and development strategic plan, and it's consistent with the town's strategic goal to develop a proactive approach to business retention and expansion. Administration understands that as local businesses and entrepreneurs reopen and operate in a post-COVID-19 recovery, that many challenges are likely, and it's anticipated with the assistance of CFWY that certain focused assessment would benefit local businesses prior to the end of this year. Hence, the proposed Community Futures Yellowhead request for $25,000 is recommended by town administration to support economic development in 2022. Options and the proposed recommendation are included in your reports. Administration would note that if this were the direction of council at this time, this would is anticipated to draw down the remaining economic development budget for 2022 to just over $5,000, and administration would not be actively looking for further expenditures in this area. That money would be available if something came to the attention of council or administration, but at $5,000, we feel that we would just essentially be satisfied with what we've been able to accomplish this year thus far. Sir, I'm available to answer any questions that council may have at this time.
Thank you, ICO Hanlon. Council. Councillor Taylor.
Why is the relation to COVID-19 important?
Administration.
Sir, through you to Councillor, and that's actually a really good question. And initially, there had been some discussions with CFWY of tying this to our remaining COVID-19 recovery grant. We've got a grant program still, but when we started to do the math, we realized that this remained the greater source. So we believe the greatest interest does remain businesses on their recovery from the COVID-19, the pandemic, but it need not be, it's no longer tied to that grant program. So this is just proposed to come out of the Town of Hinton Economic Development budget for 2022. So I would suggest that it doesn't have to be tied directly to COVID-19 recovery.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor and administration. Council, what would we like to do with this item this evening? Councillor Taylor.
I'm not going to say this is a bad idea. What I would say is I can't help but wonder if something else is going to come up in the remainder of the year with some of the initiatives that we already have going, because there's still a lot of time to come up, and how those things that would come up would compare to this. That's what I'm thinking. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Council, Councillor Magoon.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I guess the only question I still had that was unanswered, unless I missed it, what level of grassroots business engagement did we do as an organization in the town? Because one of the things that I learned from our first COVID-19 recovery engagement was that, I don't know, it felt like we were trying to come up with a plan before asking a lot of our businesses what their needs and wants were. And so I felt like there was some pushback. So administration, could you speak to that? Have we talked to a number of businesses about sort of what their feel is with this, or has Community Futures done that?
Administration.
Sir, through you to Councillor Magoon, to all of council. Town administration has not had that opportunity. We are relying on some of the feedback we've received from Community Futures on this and their understanding of interest in the program.
Councillor Magoon.
Yeah, that does it for me for right now. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Magoon. Council, any appetite for direction? Councillor Stashik.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to move that council provide $25,000 from the remaining 2022 economic development budget to Community Futures West Yellowhead to provide funds for a local economic recovery grant program to be expended before the end of 2022.
Thank you, Councillor Stashik. Council, we have a motion on the floor. Any debate? ICO Hanlon.
Sir, I'm wondering if council would consider a minor amendment, and I apologize, it's my report and I probably should have captured it. My intent was that the motion read that council provide up to $25,000. And if I could just speak to that, again, this is contingent on successful proposals coming forward to Community Futures in the range between $1,000 to $5,000. So there may not be the need to expend the entirety of 25,000. It's simply putting a limit, an upper limit of 25,000. So it had been my intent, and I apologize that it's not there, of up to $25,000.
Thank you for that. Councillor Stashik, are you good with the change in wording?
Yes, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stashik. Thank you, ICO Hanlon. Council, we have a motion on the floor. Councillor LaBerge.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. And I've really been sort of debating this one, but I'm not going to support this. This really strikes me as money looking for a need more than a need looking for money. And for us to roll into the rest of the year with sort of $4,500 in the economic development savings account seems, well, I would soon have some more there.
Thank you, Councillor LaBerge. Councillor Taylor.
Yeah, supported. I can't help but wonder what I said before, that something else is going to come up and that might compare very favorably to this. And this is me agree with Councillor LaBerge. It's like we're kind of looking to try to spend money here.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. I guess my question to administration, because in principle support this. Hypothetically, if we don't move forward with this, what is administration's current intent with the budget that's remaining? We have to allocate staff in order to start looking for something. What's down the pipe? Any comments on some of those concerns?
Sir, thank you very much, and through you to all of council. If you were to go back to page 63 of your agenda package, you'll see the proposed timeline just below halfway down the page, and you'll see actually successful applications will be notified essentially the week of September 16th to September 20th. Both CFWY and the town will be aware of the success or the lack of uptake in this program. In essence, the ability for us to confirm how much of the $25,000 is expended, or whatever the actual amount may be of council, if you wish to proceed with this. So as proposed, we would be somewhat committed to that 25,000. Well, sorry, not somewhat. We would be committed up to $25,000 per this motion. If there was not the uptake that we both anticipate there may be to this program, we would then understand how much money remains available, and that administration would be continuing to seek opportunities that were worthy to bring back before council for consideration before the end of the year.
Thank you, IC O'Hanlon. Councillor Taylor.
Well, plus we have a lot of the opportunities that for the money that we've spent so far have come to us, and they've been fairly obvious. Like there's still 6 to 9 months. We have an HREDC. They could come up with something. We've got money we've spent on DMO and other economic development initiatives. They could come up with something. So might not be something that we chase. It might be something that chases us, and it's a really good idea.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Councillor Stashik.
Thank you, Mayor Michaels. So one of the reasons I put this forward as a motion and that I'm supporting it, I think that having a group like Community Futures looking after this for us, it solves some issues. We don't currently have an economic development officer working within the town. So by being able to contract this out to Community Futures, I think they're probably one of the best groups to be able to administer this. They've got their finger completely and totally on the pulse of our local business community. Second to that, I believe that this is a good use of this $25,000. Businesses are still recovering from the impacts of COVID. We're not back to where we were previously. And I think something like this, even though they're relatively small amounts, could make a difference to some of those businesses that are trying to get by until they can get back on their feet, until things are back to normal. So I fully do support this, and those are the reasons that I do. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stashik. I'll be in support of this. I think if we're going to debate, putting this against something else, I think we should be having that conversation tonight. What are the other options? What are we going to do? Are we going to just say no to this just because we may not have something, or we may find something later? If something is that great, and we're in August, we have five and a half months left to really to go. And to me, the approach, as Councillor Stashik said, we don't have an economic development officer. We've taken a different approach where we are working with other parties in order to deliver it. And a lot of work has been put into it. And I see the value in it. And I like the new wording of the motion that if there is no intake to this, we will still have those funds, and then we can have a conversation with whatever is remaining. So to me, it'll sort of give, but if we're going to say no to something for something else, that has to be, to me, in conjunction. We have to have that conversation and at least give different directions. So until I see that, I like this, and I'll be in support of this. Thank you. Council, any further debate, questions? Seeing none. Call to question that council provide up to $25,000 from the remaining 2022 economic development budget to Community Futures West Yellowhead to provide funds for a local economic recovery grant program to be expended before the end of 2022. Council, all those in favor? Opposed? And that is carried 3-2. Council, any further direction or questions, comments for this action item this evening? Seeing none, thank you, administration and council. That takes care of our action items for this evening. That'll bring us to 8.1, which is our reporting, and I will start on my right with Councillor Taylor.
Before, I would like to say that I went to the student food today, and I weight tested the children's rope, and it is weight tested for I'm sure now. So, feel comfortable.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Councillor LaBerge.
Nothing to report, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor LaBerge. Councillor Stashik.
I have nothing to report, although I would have a question for Councillor Taylor. What
Absolutely.
would have happened if the test had failed?
I would be saved by our
Excellent lifeguard service.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor and Stashik. Councillor Magoon.
Nothing to report, but very glad to be back. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Magoon, and nothing to report on my end. That'll bring us to our Chief Administrative Officer reporting.
Thank you, sir. To Councillor Taylor, I will get you one of our CSA forms. I'll ask you to fill out just on the testing of the swing. Well, for our compliance. Council, I had committed to report back and just got the details here today. The update on the enhancements to the school crossing at George Redmond, and so have been able to confirm through last week and earlier today that and when we came before council with some of the ideas we'd hoped to implement before the return to school in September. Of course, the supply chain, as so many other things, was the matter of concern. We are now confident that everything is ordered, is on its way, will be here on time. Staff have been working with the school board and facilities at the school to ensure line locates and getting the concrete in and getting all the work done. So we do expect in and around August 25th to have the work completed in time for the return to school in the fall. So I do thank staff for their hard work on this and the assistance from the school and the school board on that. To all of council, you're quite familiar with this. I shared with Councillor Magoon, I'm going to say this rather odd email that keeps popping up with concerns, and it seems to get somehow caught in our in basket regarding the playground up at I believe it's the Terrace Heights area on Lupin Way. This was dealt with through emails, I think a couple of weeks, possibly a month ago. It came up again here today. I will confirm that the public member who had inquired on this is quite satisfied with where it's at this time. I did view this as an opportunity and confirmed with council I would take the opportunity here this evening to try and update our work with the developer on the playground improvements. They continue to commit to the work. They have not done it yet. Our staff have put safety fencing up. So in essence, until the repairs that are necessary have been completed, we don't want the public in and around this playground structure yet, but Qualico remains committed to doing that work and getting that work completed this season. So again, I'm working with Gary to try and figure out why these emails keep popping up, but the ratepayer is quite happy, has been in communication with our public works staff, and we are continuing to work with the developer on the necessary improvements to that playground structure. It is in essence a private playground that was constructed in phase 1 of the development. Now with phase 2 not proceeding, the developer is very interested in committing and dedicating this to the town of Hinton and giving this over to our operation. We are working with them to do that hopefully before the end of the year. Thank you.
Thank you, ICO Hanlon. Councillor Magoon.
Sorry, no, I misread the agenda. My apologies.
No worries. Council, any notices of motion? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion. Councillor Magoon.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to move that we move into closed session.
Thank you, Councillor Magoon. Council, we have a motion on the floor. All those in favor? That is passed. Thank you very much, everyone. Hello, everyone. I'd like to reconvene this meeting from closed session at 5:46. Council. Councillor LaBerge.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to make a motion that a council approve the draft amendments to the CAO contract as discussed in closed session.
Thank you, Councillor LaBerge. Council, any debate, questions? Seeing none, I'll call to question. All those in favor? That is passed unanimously. Council, anything further this evening? If not, Councillor Magoon. Councillor Magoon.
I'd like to move that we adjourn.
Thank you, Councillor Magoon. Council, all those in favor? Thank you very much, everyone.